Eagle 7 here, and in this video we're going to put together everything that we've learned about normal takeoffs, normal climb outs, doing a high and low recon to a confined area approach, and we're going to introduce pinnacle landing. Pinnacle landing is just landing on an object higher than the ground. It can be the top of a building. In this case we're going to simulate a pinnacle landing using a ship. It's where our landing area kind of falls away quickly on all sides. So as we make our normal takeoff, accelerate to 40 knots, increase our collective, pitch for 70 knot climb out. We're going to go ahead and level off at 500 feet plus or minus 100 and target about 60 to 70 knots. So landing on a ship, it's going to be a confined area approach, right? We're going to have obstacles around our landing zone. It's going to be a pinnacle because it's raised off of the surface. So we want to make sure that we do our high recon, our low recon, and some common areas with a pinnacle are letting your airspeed get a little bit too slow or getting a little bit low to the ground. Sometimes it can be difficult to judge your altitude and airspeed on a raised platform. So as we come into the area here, you can see I have a large container ship docked at the port. So the first thing we want to do is from our stable cruise speed of 60 knots and 500 feet plus or minus 100 plus or minus 10 on the airspeed, we want to start our high recon. And if you remember from the other videos, we're looking for the wind direction and speed. We always want to land into the wind. We're looking for our point of entry and point of exit. Based on the winds, how are we going to enter into this approach? We're going to look for our exit. If we don't like the approach and we want to execute a mist or a go around, how are we going to get away from the ship and all the obstacles? What does our landing zone look like? Well, in this case it's a ship, so it's a hard, smooth surface. And there's obstacles on either side, to the left or to the right, so we have to be aware of that. There doesn't look like there's any wires or anything over the heliport spot that we would have to be aware of. So as we continue our high recon, we're now thinking about setting up our approach. We know that we're gonna enter into the wind, so now we're on our downwind leg. So then we're gonna make some power changes here. We want to start to slowly lose some altitude and slowly lose some airspeed. And remember, confined area and a pinnacle approach are going to be steeper than a normal approach. We talked about normal approach, sight picture, steep approach, sight picture. So as we come around on our base leg to final, we got the aircraft about 300 feet, 50 knots. We're starting to slow down. We want to keep our altitude a little bit higher than normal, than a normal approach. We're looking for a steep approach here, and we may have to modify that slightly. And as we roll in on final, now we're checking our sight picture. We got that landing zone right about on that horizontal bar that we talked about in my last video, and we got it just about at the co-pilot gunner's helmet. So we've got lined up on a steep approach, but again, we may have to modify that because this is a pinnacle landing. We might not want to come down quite as steep. So again, now we're slowing our airspeed and slowly descending. Remember, settling with power, steep approaches, low airspeed, high sink rate, some power on the engine. So now we're having to use collective to slowly adjust our altitude, maintaining directional control with the anti-torque pedals, keeping an eye on our landing zone. Now again, on the low recon, which is our final approach, we're just confirming what we saw on the high recon. Everything looks okay. I don't see any obstacles in our landing zone. And we keep coming down using our collective, adjusting it as necessary. And as we get down and we start to enter into that hover, we're going to need a little forward cyclic, just a little bit, to kind of ease that helicopter forward. And remember, we've got a lot of tail behind us, so it looks like we're going to land really far forward, but when we look at the exterior video, you'll see that we're not as far forward as it looks from the cockpit. So we used all of our factors. We used our confined area operation, we introduced it to a Pinnacle landing. So let's go ahead from here. Let's do a Pinnacle departure. We want to gain just a little bit of altitude, similar to a max performance, but we don't have any obstacle in front of us that we're trying to clear. So we don't want to go too high, but we got railings and we got some obstacles out in front of us we don't want to hook a tire or anything on. So from the Pinnacle, we want to get light on the wheels by increasing the collective. And here I'm looking to the left, looking to the right, and looking above just to clear the airspace to see what obstacles are around me before I pull on the collective, get light on the wheels. And it's similar to a max performance, but we're not going to go to 100%, and we're not going to accelerate vertically. We're going to just get high enough to clear those obstacles, push forward with the cyclic, lower our nose to gain some airspeed. Now we've cleared all the obstacles. Now we can resume our normal takeoff. We're accelerating through 40 knots, increasing the collective, pitching for 70 for our normal climb out attitude. And we'll climb up to 500 feet and we'll target 60 knots. Again, plus or minus 100 on altitude, plus or minus 10 on airspeed. I'm going to come around and I'm going to do this again, and I want to show you some mistakes that what we talked about with the Pinnacle. We can have sometimes there's and of course being a computer game it's even harder, but in real life judging your distance, your airspeed, your walking speed, because there's a lot of obstacles in the way. So again, as we approach the ship, we're going to do a high recon, looking for obstacles, wind speed direction, our entry and exit point, any obstacles in the landing area, any obstruction or wires or chains maybe for a ship that got strung across the landing zone, boxes, loose items that the rotor wash could actually blow and circulate into the air and up into the rotor system and cause damage. We had one of our pilots one time was flying along the beach. We used to do beach runs, and he got a little low, and there were people flying kites out on the beach, and he actually flew into a kite. Now it's really small string flying a kite, so it wasn't too bad, but it got all wrapped around the swash plate and the pitch change links and the rotor head, and it was kind of a mess having to cut that all out of there. The helicopter still was fine, it still flew normally, but he did get a bunch of kite string wrapped around the swash plate on the rotor head. So even loose items or things like that, kites, balloons, stuff. We've seen a lot of balloons like Mylar balloons that people would release. You try to stay clear of those. Even birds. So here we come now. We've done our high recon. We're making our base leg turn, base to final. Here we want to be like 300 feet, 60 to 50 knots. Shooting for that steep approach, which is just above the co-pilot's helmet there, would be a good reference point. And again, because it's not a confined area approach, we may adjust that somewhere between a steep and a normal. And as you can see, this is more of a normal approach angle. I wasn't quite as steep on this one, and you'll see what happens as I start to lower the altitude. You see I'm around 27 knots here, and I've got a pitch angle looking pretty good. It's right above the co-pilot's head, but if you look at the vertical speed, it's about 300 feet per minute, and I allow the aircraft to settle a little more than what I wanted to. So you'll watch, it goes from having that landing sight on the co-pilot's helmet, and it'll move up in the windshield, and I'll have to catch that with collective right about here. You see the helicopter starts to settle. That's what you want to be careful of. But I caught it in time, was able to recover, get my sight picture back, and then slowly ease the helicopter onto the landing area. Remember, again, everything is slow with the helicopter. You can see I'm doing like 4 or 5 knots. Just gentle pressure, pushing forward on that cyclic, maintaining my altitude adjustments with collective, up and down, whatever I need. Remember, land a little bit more forward of your landing zone than you think. You got a lot of tail out there in the back. And then just gently sent the aircraft down. But you can see there on short final, I let the sight picture get away from me. The aircraft started to settle. And I caught it quickly with collective, but if you weren't paying attention, it could definitely cause some problems. You might hook the tires on the railing on the boat. You might hit the side of the boat. It could cause some kind of problem. So you want a little bit steeper than a normal approach. You can adjust as necessary. And remember to get your walking speed. Keep that short final really slow and manage it with collective. On the next one.